Hey, it's Michael Douglas. Welcome back to Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And 4 songs from 1982 that changed the trajectory of MTV. Now, MTV had been on for a few months, started in August of 1981, but it had to get some time to get its footing, but it quickly, and I mean very quickly, by January of the following year, really demonstrated itself as something to be reckoned with, as it gave artists new reasons to express themselves sonically. And in return, the highest performing artists not only benefited themselves, but also MTV as well. The rate of return for showing some of their more popular acts also helped the network. Now, I won't be talking about the racial missteps, I guess, in the early days of MTV when they pretty much refused or just did not elect to play a lot of songs by black artists for whatever reason. Could have been ratings, who knows, except for the most popular. But that really wouldn't occur for at least a year and a half until Michael Jackson really broke through with Thriller, and he definitely was there by the time Thriller came out as a song and a video, a short film in early 1984. But let's roll back this clock to talk about the early days of MTV when it was just being noticed. And this is at a time when I would say the majority of cable systems really didn't have this network. It's just hard to really imagine that. But I remember when I was in high school, fall of 1982, that's when we first got cable TV. So roughly a year later, and I do recall having MTV on our lineup, which I think consisted of an amazing 20 channels. And I think that was that and the Weather Channel and maybe ESPN were the only 24-hour networks. It's hard to imagine. CNN, I guess. But I really wasn't into all that news and politics and stuff. I was just a teenager who wanted to have fun. So in order to understand, I think, the role of MTV in establishing core acts that I'll talk about in a second, well, you have to think about, what was life like before MTV? Now, it's important to understand that the network started because it was the first place that could be dedicated to music and music videos, as there wasn't a TV station specifically for that purpose. So in terms of raw reaction, the fact that this was the first entity of its kind was huge, and that helped. Before MTV, artists had put their attention toward a lot of live performances, and many times those performances were repurposed for their respective, what they would call musical interpretations. But I would call them early music videos. And these particular videos that weren't live performances were quite bad. That's because we didn't have a reference point. Again, these were a lot of vanity projects for artists who just wanted another way to express themselves. You could watch an earlier video I did on Stevie Wonder's songs where he basically did a whole video for the entire album, and that video explains why that was kind of a vanity project for him. But it turns out that it was, I won't say universally panned as a project in 1979. It just wasn't understood. And now, over 45, 50, almost 50 years later, people do recognize that album by Stevie Wonder as being ahead of its time. But, check out that video. Just do a search on the channel for it and check that out. But before MTV standardized the concept of the music video, it was pretty disorganized. So, just random. But again, artist interpretation. MTV would definitely change that, but artists would have a say in that too. It was a kind of a symbiotic marriage of how these two entities basically came together. The artists, MTV, to change music history forever after that. So let's look at 4 songs that I think were instrumental, even though they weren't instrumentals, in doing that. And they all came out in 1982. And when MTV launched in 1981, few understood how it would revolutionize the music industry. And by 1982, music videos had come to define certain artists as much as their studio recordings. Video directors grew more ambitious, of course. Some clips resembled mini movies, as I talked about, and this had a snowball effect in continuing the trend of this as a new technological medium, a new technology from which, from my vantage point, changed rock history after that. So the role of MTV can't be understated, and I think the music videos for these songs that I'll discuss in a second went a long way to turn the network into a cultural juggernaut. First up, Billy Idol, White Wedding. After his punk band Generation X broke up, Billy Idol emerged with a blend of new wave and hard rock on his debut solo album, and he teamed up with guitarist Steve Stevens, who actually worked with Michael Jackson on the Bad album, whose iconic riffs defined Billy Idol's most iconic releases. And his intro arpeggios on, say, White Wedding set the tone for the Billy Idol's persona as a lip-sneering artist on this song. And it also set the stage for his massively successful and critically successful follow-up, Rebel Yell. And as the visual of goth nuptials alongside Billy Idol's spiked blonde hair, gloved fist, and his punk Elvis snarl, it just, all these things made White Wedding a hit, and of course benefited MTV in the process. Jack and Diane by John Mellencamp. John Cougar. That's right. John Cougar started out as Johnny Cougar, then John Cougar Mellencamp, then John Mellencamp. But in 1982, John Cougar had a little ditty that became a big hit, and the biggest hit of his career, the first and only number one of his career, Jack and Diane. And this tale about a small town romance not only influenced future roots-minded artists, but it also showed that one didn't need a cartoonish or outlandish video to find success. However, the studio track didn't take shape until a glam rock legend got a hold of it. Guitarist Mick Ronson helped arrange the song and contributed to the baby rattle type percussion and the stadium-sized gang vocal, "Let It Rock, Let It Roll." This song not only pretty much established John Mellencamp as a serious artist who ended up having a huge legacy and who actually recently played at Farm Aid 40, the 40th anniversary of Farm Aid here in Minnesota. One could really argue that his MTV appearance really created that longevity in his career. And of course, his video helped the network as well. Rock the Casbah by The Clash. Punk's first wave was over nearly as soon as it was created, but The Clash survived and continued to evolve musically. The group infused its sounds with reggae influences and also pushed punk toward its more commercially viable new wave future. Rock the Casbah became the band's only top 10 pop hit here in the States, but it influenced a generation of establishment bands with punk attitudes, pop instincts, strong visuals, and for those who wish to partake, leftist politics. Finally, I think this song typifies not only the style of MTV, but also, out of this entire list, the song that I think was the most influential in terms of its accessibility. You ask anybody to name a video in the first year of MTV that was as influential, I would say 3/4, easily, 75% would say Hungry Like the Wolf by Duran Duran. Its big budget video made them superstars overnight. The cinematic clip was an early staple on MTV. It helped pioneer what became the most essential way to promote records over the next 20 years. And that's not an understatement. After the chart-topping success of Hungry Like the Wolf, actually hit number 3, Duran Duran posters plastered the walls of countless teenagers, not me, obsessed with Simon Le Bon's face. The exotic production, which was filmed in Sri Lanka, earned Duran Duran the first Grammy for Best Music Video. And I did an earlier video on an album series I should bring back to the channel called My Version of the Hit Album or something like that, or the most essential songs on an album or fantasy album. And I did it for their album Rio. And you can do a search on the channel to check that out. Pretty interesting stuff. But of course, this song I think is included. Check it out. I'd have to watch it again myself. So these core artists and their core influential videos, Duran Duran, Hungry Like the Wolf, White Wedding, Billy Idol, Rock the Casbah by The Clash, and Jack and Diane by John Cougar, John Mellencamp. These, I think, are 4 videos, all released in 1982, that not only put MTV on the map, but established those bands as true iconoclasts. And I think everybody who watches this show would agree with me. And I think this is one of the longest videos I've ever made, so I'll stop right now. I'm Michael Douglas. If you like what you see on this channel, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. We just hit 500 subscribers, so on the way to 1K. And as the late great Barry White always used to say, let the music play, and I'll see you on the next episode.